Thank you so much, and good morning, everybody. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you today about the cool things that you can do with AI today and in the future by using AI ML platforms. And we're going to try and talk a little bit about the future of AI and how generative apps will fit into this if we have time. And if we don't, feel free to talk to me for the rest of the conference. I could talk about this stuff all day, all night. So over the past several years, we've seen artificial intelligence really explode across the enterprise. And this is not, the first time that we've had this kind of excitement around AI in the enterprise, right? Like, I think many of us remember just about 10 years ago, there was a particular company that made a big push around AI, and that really didn't end up with a lot of enterprise AI applications for a lot of us. But what we're seeing today is that, AI has really gone from this kind of, cool experimental, making, these big shiny projects to really being a much more fundamental part of the enterprise. And so we're anticipating that nearly 100% of companies will be using enterprise AI by 2025. And we've seen this by a really significant growth rate over the past several years. So in 2020, we saw 68% of enterprise companies integrating AI. And then in 2022, we saw 72%. And then by 2025, we expect to see nearly 100%. Now, these are not all enterprise-wide AI applications, right? These may be, we're building a particular application in this corner or in this corner over here. They're not big, unified projects. And even though that's the case, we're already seeing significant value, or these customers are seeing significant value from their AI projects. But they're starting to run into some problems around this. As they continue to progress and get to those second, third, fourth order use cases that we just heard about, the complexity continues to increase. And so if you just kind of build this bespoke application, you can't really scale it to these other use cases. And this expansion of the capabilities of your AI applications is also being driven by a lot of developments in the broader technology market. So we have things like synthetic data and generative AI. We've heard a couple times about generative AI already today, but we also have to think about synthetic data. So this is the use of techniques to basically create mirrors of your initial data sets, so you could think of them as similar to digital twins, though not exactly. And this is a way that we can think about closing that data gap in AI that many of us are experiencing, whether it's, we don't have enough data to actually build our application, or there's not, sufficient data out there in the world, or even, maybe there's too many privacy concerns around that data. Then we also have many advancements in natural language processing and generation. So this fits into the generative AI space, but it also expands outwards to get into spaces like doing natural language querying, creating natural language results that are a summarization of various different analytical capabilities. And really, as we heard about a couple times, this is really going to change the way that we interact with our computers. Not, in a sudden and deeply fundamental way, but the same way that we've continued to evolve how we've interacted with our machines over the past 20, 30, 40 years. And then we have also model training, testing, and explanation. So it's become very obvious to many of us over the past few years that if we're building models to give to the business to build into an application, being able to actually tell them what this model is doing and why is very critical to drive that adoption, which is ultimately what we want overall. So there's been increasing capabilities in being able to explain what models are doing, and also in offering capabilities to simulate how models would perform in practice under real-world conditions. Then we also have, the advent of MLOps and continuous integration and development. These products have been developing for the past few years, but many companies are still struggling to say, how accurate are my models when they're in production? How can I monitor the data drift? How do I communicate with the business so that it can understand things like concept drift? So when the business decides, okay, this is not the metric we want to be looking at anymore, how am I in communication with them? And then finally, we have the whole space around low and no code app dev. Now, this has kind of been a really interesting parallelization story across software development and data science for about the past 10, 15 years. And this space has really gotten much more sophisticated with very intuitive, GUI, as well as guided tools to walk you through, various model building exercises. And we can see how this will be then further accelerated by this whole generative AI space for doing things like no-code development by writing a natural language query, identifying issues in code by submitting it to a large language model, and many aspects of that nature. And broadly, we at Forrester call these things Turing bots, and we expect these to be a core part of development over the next several years. But like I was saying at the beginning, we've seen many, many people adopt AI today, but in talking with our clients at Forrester, as well as just general folks out there in the public, really one of the things that many folks run into is the complexity of these systems as they're moving forward. So, I've spoken to folks who have spent years building their own bespoke AI ML platform, but as the years progress and more capabilities are expected of these platforms, they're finding it very hard to keep up. So today, these are some of the critical pillars of enterprise AI that we see today. So this first one is really around the data. And I think, any of us who have actually worked directly with data in our jobs, the perennial problem of actually doing modeling and analytics and things of that nature is getting data into a good state. Now, historically, a lot of these previously called predictive analytics tools, now moving into the AI ML tools, really had just very light kind of, capabilities for data ingestion and blending. But today, we see in the AI ML platform space that vendors are delivering full-blown, almost advanced BI-like capabilities in their data ingestion and blending components so that you can actually work with that, derive features, understand statistics, and actually move to the next stage of actually building out your models and experimenting with them. So, this has, been traditionally focused around the folks with the notebooks and then the broad space of the citizen data scientist. And, we really see AI ML platforms as needing to address all of these different types of model developers within the platform. So you're gonna need to support, your hardcore data scientists who want to work in Python or R or whatever else. But then, there's a huge swath of other folks who they may have some understanding of how to build models, but maybe they only have understanding of data. So we need to give tools like AutoML and whatnot for folks to actually build the models that they need to make differences in their business. Then we have this aspect of actually testing and evaluating these models. So once the models are built, it's important to actually understand how these are going to perform in the real world. So being able to run simulation tests by sending, test data against them to see how they'll respond. And then looking at, are there going to be any aspects of security around these models that we might need to think about? Though not too many people are thinking about this today, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But then there's also this really critical aspect that I think has really only started to come into the broader mindset of how to approach these things around deploying these models into applications and the model ops piece. So I talked a bit about model ops before, but I really want to emphasize this aspect of deploying into applications. Because as folks are building more and more AI capabilities into their enterprise, it's not enough that they just build a single model and they put it into their production environment and then you go. You really have to have a much better understanding of what your whole world of models is, what your model repository might be, and things of that nature. And also, you might need to work with your supplier to actually get those applications off the ground. So, we've heard a lot about the dedicated applications earlier this morning, and that's very important. But if you build it on top of a AI ML platform like this, then not only do you get those kind of pre-built applications or templates or whatever, but you enable yourself to go farther, to build more, and to even extend those capabilities for yourself and your customers in the future. And then this last piece is around the multi-role collaboration and communication. So one of the things that we've noticed in talking to our clients and speaking to many folks in the space is that as enterprise AI moves from being a more niche initiative that is within digital innovation teams or analytics teams and becomes more of a strategic priority, obviously more people are going to be involved. So we need to actually support the input and the feedback and the collaboration of these folks within the AI ML platforms themselves. And so we can see this through various different approaches. So some folks are basically taking the approach that within the application, you put in your AI ML requirements as a business user, and that follows the model development, the application development, all the way through to the actual release within the context of the platform. And then there's also aspects of that explainability, so being able to communicate to the business leaders, okay, this is how this application is likely to perform in production, and this is what it's going to mean for our business. And we will continue to communicate with you about this for the next 6 weeks on a weekly basis to let you know how things are going to change. So it's really important to build out these collaboration capabilities and leverage a lot of the best practices that we have learned from software development over the past 45 years, but have yet to really bring into data science. So that's things like we started with model libraries and feature stores and things of that nature, but really bringing it together in a much more unified fashion is what's going to allow us to build these more complex applications in the future and actually have the visibility and transparency into their capabilities that is demanded by our clients, our partners, government regulators, what have you. Now, while these are some of the critical pillars of enterprise AI today, I want to point out that there are a few pillars that I expect to be really important in the coming year. Or not in the coming year, in the next couple years. So the first one we've heard a lot about already, generative AI. I won't bemoan that right now. But one thing that we haven't talked about as yet, that we did hear some alluding to it with the entire conversation around cyber threats, is the aspect of actually applying security practices to our AI applications from the development level. So many of you are in highly regulated industries, secure environments, so I imagine that you are doing typical cybersecurity operations on your models that are in deployment. But are you doing things like analyzing, all of the open source Python packages that you downloaded for known exploits? Are you looking at how data is actually hitting your application in production to make sure that someone's not trying to drift the responses for that model in preparation for doing some type of attack down the road? I think a lot of us are not really thinking about that today, and I think that is going to be one of the really important aspects of enterprise AI in the next couple of years as we reach these higher levels of complexity, and as enterprise AI really moves from being like the coat of paint on your house, or maybe a nice fountain you built in front of your building, to being the electricity and the plumbing that really drives enterprise applications. And so I only have a couple minutes left, so I'll just quickly talk about some of the ways that people are using these AI ML platforms. And so one thing I mentioned at the beginning was that folks have been doing building AI for years and years. But what we've seen in folks that have spent years building out their own bespoke AI ML platforms is that as they're starting to fold in things like model ops, thinking about security, their bespoke platform doesn't actually meet the needs of their users, so that they're migrating from these bespoke platforms that they've spent a lot of time and money trying to build out to these more commercial platforms because they give them a better fit for their future operations, as well as allowing them to be more flexible. Then these platforms also allow folks to embed intelligence into every single application. So I talked a bit about this before, building the applications on top and extending the platform. But when we talk to enterprise analytics leaders who build with these platforms, they see things like, and this is a direct quote from one person, that their AI/ML platform provides the hub for all of their analytics for their entire suite of AI/ML applications, and not just to deploy them, but to experiment, develop, test, and productionalize them. So really, these AI/ML platforms allow you to be in every single application everywhere. And then finally here, they really allow data scientists and developers and executives to work better together. Because one of the big problems with a lot of data science organizations right now is they do not move at the same speed as their software development colleagues. And so using AI/ML platforms, we can start to smooth that relationship and make data science a little bit more iterative, a little bit more agile, and more appropriate for enterprise contexts. And so with that, I will say thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking to all of you over the course of the next couple of days, and get out there and build the next generation of unique and intelligent AI applications with platforms. Thank you all very much.